Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for Future-Proof Data Protection with Commvault. My name's James Watts. I'm here from Data Barracks, and I'm joined by Marc Lucas from Commvault. Some eagle-eyed folks may have noticed that actually Marc was not the person that we originally said was going to be presenting with us. It was originally going to be a chap called Jason Gerard. Bless him, Jason hasn't been well, so we're kicking off as probably on the theme of the day, which is with our backup stepping in instead. So thank you very much, Marc, for joining us on this.
No
Before I hand over to Marc, who's going to be our visiting guest lecturer today from Commvault, I'm just going to clear off a couple of bits of housekeeping for everyone for how it's all going to run today. So we're scheduled for 30 minutes. If you have any questions as we run through, type them in on the right-hand side. We'll try to go through as many as we possibly can at the end of the session. If there's any we don't get around to, we'll make sure we get in touch directly and make sure everything is answered. And to answer the first question of every webinar is, yes, we are recording this session, and we'll provide links to that after this, along with the slides. And Marc has a whole handful of resources that he's going to be referring to, so we'll send those out too. And before I hand over to Marc, I just wanted to take a second to explain why it is that we've asked him to join us today from Commvault and talk about what we're calling here future-proof data protection with Commvault. And there's two reasons for this, and both tie into really why we as a service provider use Commvault and why we're kind of such a big fan of it as a technology. And the first of those reasons is when you provide backups to lots and lots and lots of companies, as we do, so hundreds of companies, we run sort of over 1 million backup sets every month. One of the things that's absolutely critical is that service is very, very reliable. We monitor how many backups are succeeding, how many are failing, and for us, it's a kind of fundamental requirement for the service, because we know unless we have reliable backups, we're not going to be able to restore it when we need to. We have used, still use several other technologies, but there's a reason that we use Commvault as the basis for our backup as a service, and it's because we know we can rely on it, and it's the technology that enables that service. Now, the second part and the second reason that we use Commvault, which is exactly what Marc will be talking about, is Commvault has the most vast enterprise level of functionality and compatibility with the kind of wide range of systems that we protect. And as you can imagine, if you perform backups for hundreds of companies, every organization is changing their systems. They're going through some kind of migration from on-premises to SaaS to Microsoft Azure and AWS. So for us, it's kind of vital that we're able to cover that vast range of systems. And which is why we'll kind of bring Marc in. So I'll hand over to you on that, Marc, and let you take it from there.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, James, and checks in the post for that really good intro. That was really appreciated. So what we're going to talk about in this session, very much what James has talked about, how we can help you future-proof data protection. But I think to start off with, we'll very briefly talk about the challenges that you're all meeting, those top business priorities that you're looking at in what James was mentioning at the beginning, this change that we're all going through. Obviously, COVID has accelerated things like digital transformation and how you want to adapt as a business. Then we'll concentrate on how Commvault can help you with those challenges. And I think, as James mentioned at the beginning, any questions that you have, please use the chat facility, and we should have time for a Q&A session at the end. And I'm going to, as James mentioned, share a bucket load of collateral and resources with you as well. So when we look at the challenges that you've all met over the last couple of years, I think number one, no surprise, is going to be around ransomware. And I love this headline from ZDNet, which very much goes into very briefly what I wanted to talk about. And I appreciate that there may be a little bit of saturation from all the vendors out there about ransomware and how they can help you. The reason for that, though, is that the situation isn't getting any better, it's getting worse. So last year it was estimated there's a ransomware attack happening every 11 seconds, and you can see that in 10 years time it's going to be even worse. It's going to be happening every 2 seconds. So it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. And you can see there's a huge amount of cost involved in there. But when you boil down the cost or the impact that will have on you, The ransom that you pay is actually a very small part of the overall cost that you need to consider in getting yourself back online. Things like, for example, that your data has been encrypted. May well be that even if you pay the ransom, I think I read a statistic recently that said that up to 60% of those who pay the ransom don't get all their data back. For me, though, the most important part that I wanted to call out here was how many days it takes most firms to recover, up to 21 days. And think about the impact that will have on you and your business if you were not able to run as effectively as possible, or potentially not run at all for up to 21 days. Think about your bottom line, but also think about the reputation, the lack of customer service that you're offering to your customers as well. So unsurprisingly, in the top 8 priorities that CIO called out, number 1 with a bullet is strengthening cybersecurity skills. And yes, you may well be, this again is where data barracks can definitely come in and help you with that, because part of Commvault built in, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, is we have ransomware detection and a whole raft of features that will help you recover from unexpected downtime for whatever reason, including a ransomware attack. But overall, when you look at the cost of how much it's going to cost you to get back online, that will be dwarfed by how much money you could potentially lose as a business. And then just to let you know, number 2, unsurprisingly, is digital transformation, making sure that you can flex as a business, you can be more agile. And number 3, something that's been built into Commvault, and I'll talk about this in a bit more depth a little bit later, which is about automation. Nobody wants to spend any more time on things like backup than they absolutely have to. We've had automation blended into Commvault. We've been around for 25 years, and we've had automation blended into what we do for 25 years. But we've also, and again, I'll touch on this a little bit later on, we've also integrated AI and machine learning as technologies advanced as well. So on that journey that I know that all of you are on, it depends on what stage of the journey you are regarding transforming your business, or even adapt or die during these uncertain times. You've got data that you have on premise. You may have data within, even mainframe or tape. And by the way, Commvault, as well as being very future-proof, we are also a lot more backwards compatible. So if you've got any strange workloads, legacy workloads, we'll be able to protect those for you as well. But as you move your data to software as a service, to Office 365, for example, to the cloud, to containers, potentially, if you're not looking at a solution which is one pane of glass, one backup solution to rule them all, what you're going to encounter is using multiple tools, because they won't be able to give you that full data coverage. You move your data to a new place, and it may well be that the backup tools that you've got won't support you with that data in that new place. So you're going to have to get another backup tool, which creates data fragmentation, data silos. But for me, the most important part of this is you need to have full data coverage. And IDC carried out a survey with over 450 Commvault customers tail end of last year. They asked them a series of questions around what was life like before Commvault and what was life like after Commvault. And you can see here that what they're calling out is that before they moved over to Commvault, only up to 61% of their data was protected. That means that they have up to 40% of their data that isn't being backed up, that isn't covered. And if they have an outage for whatever reason, someone pulling a plug, or they have a cyber attack, guess what? That data is gone forever because it wasn't backed up in the first place. And again, think about the impact that will have on you as a business if you don't have that full data coverage. So what I wanted to concentrate on very briefly is go into how Commvault can help you with protecting your data wherever it resides, on-prem, in the cloud, software as a service applications. Specifically, we'll talk very briefly about how we can help with data in cloud object storage as well. But and I will spend a bit more time on this, how we can help you have that fast and effective ransomware recovery, but also built into Commvault, and we were the first backup vendor to do this. We have very comprehensive ransomware detection as well. So we've already discussed the cloud as potentially being a big part of your business transformation, and the process of using the cloud or multi-cloud environment should be ideally streamlined with the ability to easily scale if needed. So what you want is very much the nirvana that I talked about right at the beginning, which is a single pane of glass, giving you that industry's broadest support, regardless of where your data is. Having a flexible delivery model, and of course, data barracks can offer what Commvault can do for you as a service as well. And ideally, this solution should also be infrastructure agnostic. So Commvault also have the biggest and broadest support for all the hardware vendors that are out there as well within your environment. And what you don't want is you don't want to be using multiple point solutions that don't give you that full data coverage and were never designed to work together. They're causing gaps in your data coverage. And as your business evolves and you start looking at the cloud or SaaS, then again, some vendors will struggle with giving you that complete coverage, especially when you're looking at cloud providers outside of the usual suspects like Azure, like Amazon, like Google, who we'll touch on a little bit later. So how does Commvault help? Now, if I had just one slide to talk about why Commvault, it would be this one. And this is what I call my 3P slide. The first P is our platform. One platform built on a single code base that provides you with, and I've mentioned this phrase a couple of times already, that single pane of glass that it will give you, and when you combine it with the second P, which is protection, it will give you basically a window where you're going to be able to see and have visibility and back up your data wherever it resides. So we offer the broadest workload support, and it's not just Commvault calling that out. Gartner, as you probably know, if you've done any sort of research around Commvault, we've been in the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the leaders section, in the leaders quadrant for the last 10 consecutive years. But for me, what's more powerful than that is the last couple of years they've released a critical capabilities report, which they do at the same time as the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and they for those 2 years have called out Commvault as #1 for supporting you with your data on-prem, in the cloud, and at the edge as well. Then you've got the third P. So we've got platform at the bottom, we've got protection as #2, and the third one is portability. It's about easing your journey. We're going to touch on this in a bit more detail a little bit later. Easing your journey of taking an on-premise VM and in a couple of clicks being able to move it to over 40 different clouds, moving it between clouds and moving it back again. And we've really gone through a revolution over the last 2 to 3 years of simplifying Commvault, of breaking down our platform, making it easier to consume. And obviously, part of what we offer is offered via Data Barracks as well, to make that as a service, to make it easier for you as well. But it's not just about backup. There's other things that we can do that we can potentially help you with as well. And that single pane of glass that I've been banging on about is something that we've gone at great pains to work on over the last 3 to 4 years. And the result of that is the Commvault Command Center. It's dashboard driven, very easy to understand, and it's aimed at obviously the super users who need to be able to do backup as part of their job, but also it's simplified intelligence. So it's enabling pretty much anyone who needs to do backup, who's always wanted to do backup as part of their role, but they couldn't before because they thought it was too complex. Well, they can do that all through the Commvault Command Center. And you may or may not be aware that in 2019, Commvault launched Metallic. So Metallic is our backup as a service offering for Commvault. And if you get Commvault, and then at a later date you get something that Metallic can do for you, you will then be able to, because Metallic is built on the same code base, on the same platform as Commvault, you will be able to run both together through the Commvault Command Center. So we're not about creating data silos or multiple management platforms for you to use. If you need to, you can bring both Commvault and Metallic together and run them all through the Commvault Command Center. So we mentioned at the beginning that Commvault customers called out that up to 61% of their data was protected, and that left up to 40% or 41% that wasn't. We again, with that industry's broadest workload support, we can help customers increase their data coverage by up to 33%. And that's the Gartner Critical Capabilities report that I mentioned earlier. You can see there that for the second year in a row, they've ranked Commvault as #1 across the board for dealing with those mission critical workloads. So, and that website that you can see there at the top, I really encourage you to go and have a look at that. That will show you the breadth of our support for all the apps, all the databases, all the hypervisors, container platforms, cloud storage targets, and hardware platforms that we support. And when you think about, when you're looking at a backup and data management set of tools, think about that shopping list that you have of all the different places where your data is. And ideally what you want is a solution that's going to help you put a tick in every single box of all the different locations where you have your data. And that is essentially what you will get with Commvault. And just to drill down on this in a little bit more depth around cloud and object-based storage on there, on the right-hand side, this is just a small selection of the up to 40 different cloud storage targets that Commvault support. So again, if you click on this link, when you get a copy of the presentation, which we'll share with you, you will see that big long list of all the cloud object-based storage targets that we support. And it's not just support, it's also about simplifying that journey. It's about, for example, that with Commvault, unlike other solutions that are out there, you don't need a cloud gateway. We have native integration. You've got built-in deduplication. We're also going to compress and encrypt the data when it's moved to the cloud as well. And inherently, when you move anything to the cloud, it's going to be air-gapped as well. But helping you to move and manage your data across. And we have very, very deep integration with Azure, with AWS and Google Cloud Platform, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But it's about having that single pane of glass that you can use to view your data on premise, but also with data that you've moved to the cloud for whatever reason as well. And ideally looking at making cloud very much, for example, if you're using cloud as a DR target, a DR solution, we will help you almost do that as on a pay-as-you-go basis, so firing up the resources when you need them and then powering them down when you don't. So just very briefly, because I know we've got less than 10 minutes left on here, there's a few things that I wanted to cover as well. This is just showing you, and again, no one else can beat us for the breadth and depth of support for Azure. You can see there across the board for compute, database, storage, and obviously Office 365 is very much a part of that, and containers as well. And it's a very similar story for AWS. When you go to our technical resource documentation.commvault.com, it will go into depth as to how we support Azure, AWS, and also Google as well. So when I talked about the third P, which is portability earlier, I just wanted to very briefly show you what I mean by that. So it's taking an on-premise VM, it's being able to move that to another on-premise platform, hypervisor if you wanted to, but also in a couple of clicks, be able to take an on-premise VM and migrate that to the cloud. But you can see there you've got the ability of failover, failback, and also moving it between clouds, moving it back on-premise as well. And as I mentioned before, it literally is as simple as you've got an on-premise VM and you can just restore it in a whole plethora of different cloud storage options. So we touched on at the beginning about automation. So automation is about reducing the amount of time that you're spending on backup, not spending more time. So removing the need for manual scripting. We have one of the customers that I talked to recently, a legal firm, they were spending 30 hours a week doing backup. So it was somebody's full-time job. After they moved over to Commvault, they reduced that from 30 hours to just 2 hours a week, which meant that that particular person could then dedicate a lot more time to being a lot more strategic in their role. So very much with Commvault, it's very much once you've set up the initial backup, it's set and forget. And with the Commvault Command Center that I mentioned earlier, it's about making whoever's looking after backup, but not just the backup admin, but for example, the CIO, the CTO may want to go to a dashboard and see at a glance that they're hitting their RPOs and their RTOs. And then if not, for example, the backup admin can click on this dashboard. It's an interactive dashboard and start drilling down to find out, okay, well, if we're not hitting our targets, why not? So with the, very briefly wanted to talk about ransomware, and Commvault very much adheres to the NIST protocol, which started off in the US in 2014, but has since become the global standard for Zero Trust. So we very much adhere to this. And with the taking into account how much time we've got left, what I will offer to anyone who wants it is we've delivered a 45-minute session. We've got a pre-recorded session around ransomware recovery, what Commvault can do. We're happy to share that with you as well. But yeah, if we were to concentrate on mitigating attacks, for example, you've got the foundational hardening. So what that does is that includes applying hardening recommendation based on those NIST standards that I talked about earlier, binary signing to digitally sign binaries and ensure a bad actor has not modified them. And there's also SIS level 1 hardening. So our software has been tested and confirmed as capable of that level of SIS. So while it's not realistic to make your organization completely invulnerable, every attack you can prevent will help you save tremendous pain, time, and cost as well. So we've got the AAA hardening on there for application hardening, authentication, authorization, and accounting. I've got a really good white paper that I'll share with James, and he can share with you around what we can do around our ransomware recovery strategy. But we're also very much making it easier for you to go to a dashboard, a report that you can go on to see what you have enabled, what you don't have enabled. And if you don't have, for example, two-factor authentication authorized, you can just click on it and then you can authorize it. It's about making your life easier, being able to literally at the touch of a button enable the features that you need to as well. And the white paper that I mentioned before goes into this really comprehensive framework that we have around identifying, protecting, monitoring. Monitoring is worth calling out and focusing on just for a second. We have two different types of anomaly detection. One of them, which is honeypot filing, you can't get with any other backup and data management vendor. And what we found with our anomaly detection, it's been so efficient. We have actual case studies from customers where they call out that we were the first to help them identify that they had a suspected ransomware attack. And then they can lock down that particular department where the infection is taking place and really limit the impact. But typically we've had, again, we've got lots of case studies around this. We've had Commvault customers calling out that we have got them back online in 24 hours, 48 hours or less, which is a lot better than taking up to 21 days to recover from a ransomware attack. So just a brief summary, we talked at the beginning about the top 3 CIO priorities, and at length I've gone into or touched on what we can do to help you with our industry-leading ransomware recovery features, but also that active monitoring, that honeypot filing that I mentioned before. That for me, I would prefer to have a multi-layered approach to detecting that you have a ransomware attack. We're not saying get rid of all of the other security software that you have, because they do a lot of stuff that Commvault doesn't do, but it's good to have that multi-layered approach. Then from a digital transformation perspective, we touched on very briefly helping you with that journey to the cloud. You don't need a cloud gateway, for example. We have native integration. Being able to take workloads from on-prem and move them to the cloud in just a couple of clicks. And also helping you with that initial data transfer to Azure, to AWS, and to Google. And then lastly, automation. Yes, we blended in machine learning and AI into what we do. We have an extensive API library to help integrate with the other tools that you're using. You can see, for example, we've called out ServiceNow, VMware, vRealize as well. So when you look at 2021, which I would say was probably one of the most challenging years out there due to COVID, people were looking at flexing and adapting. We helped, over 80% of our customers said we helped them on that journey to being more agile and adapting to the conditions that were changing all of the time. So I suppose really for me, this is the final slide. Commvault has market-leading breadth and depth of data coverage. We have very deep integration with a lot of tools, which again, you're going to struggle to find elsewhere as well. And we keep our product up to date. Every 6 months, there's a feature release stack full of innovation and support for the newer places where you want to put your data. And yes, I'm going to share all these resources with you around ransomware, around our platform and how that works, and also that IDC customer value survey. So I have been banging on for almost 25 minutes. Hopefully you found that useful, and just wanted to check to see any questions that have come in, James?
Yes, thank you so much. So that was terrific, and as I say, we are close to the end, but we've probably got time to get through at least a couple of these quickly. And certainly I can see that we've got a couple of questions on storage in particular, so I think these are probably relatively easy to answer quickly. So first one is, can I protect data into 2 clouds, i.e. from on-premises data center into both AWS and Azure?
Correct, yeah. And as I sort of briefly touched on earlier, with Azure, with Amazon, with Google, and a couple of other cloud providers, it's not just about using the cloud as a storage target. It's about being able to move data up to Azure. And let's say, for example, if you've got data in hot blob storage, and if we identify that that data is not being used, well, we can move that for you on an automated basis to lower tiered storage. But yes, being able to interact with all the applications and the databases and other workloads that you have in there as well.
Perfect. And then the second question, which I think probably I can answer on this one actually, which is, do you use geo-redundant storage in Azure? And certainly in the way that we as Databricks have it set up, not by default, but certainly it's an option. I think probably, I guess, as Mark was alluding to, answering the last question, there's a lot of flexibility for how you want that storage to be set up. So I think, as is the case with the cloud, there's kind of as much room for you to do as kind of as much as you want, and add as much additional resilience as you choose. So perfect.
Yes,
In which case, I think we're bang up to time there. So I'll finish and say, firstly, thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. And lastly, thank you so much, Mark, for coming and being our visiting guest lecturer from Commvault today.
No problem. Okay, and again, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to reach out to Databricks, and we'll be more than happy to have a deeper chat. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See ya.